It's Wednesday, and you know what that means. We're back live on the Big Mountain.
I was sleeping and now I'm awake. The live does it every time.
All right.
Welcome back to the Big Mountain Live. Had a nice little new intro there. Try to get you guys all fired up and ready to go. We got a full agenda of things to talk about, topics to talk about. I see we've got a nice crew here on already. We've got some Clemson fans, some FSU fans. We've got some of our longtime mountain dwellers. Steven, that college football guy. We have genetics on. Whole bunch of good. I saw JEH was on earlier. You guys are already doing the chat thing, which is awesome. We appreciate that. And we've got, again, another full lineup. Like I say, we're going to start with some of the ACC information. Don't have a ton on it, but we want to start with that. Then we're going to get into the Mountain West out of conference games. One of the agenda items that we kind of didn't get to last week because we had some power issues. So hopefully, I think we have been told that we are good to go. We've got new energy sources, and I think we're okay. And then I know Steve is going to talk about some QBs or QB rooms in the Big Ten. And then hopefully we can have a little bit of talk about this, maybe at the end. I know we have both Steven and that college football guy, the two commissioners with you and I, and we'll talk a little bit about that 64-team draft.
We got squeezed money.
Squeezed money's on. Good to have you here, sir. So let's start with Clemson. I see we've got Kendrick on. He's actually in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina. We talk about Mecklenburg quite a bit. And our friend there, Judge Bledsoe. And while he's in North Carolina, he's a Tiger fan. So we are going to start, just for him, we are going to start with the Tigers of Clemson. Just a couple things I want to talk about. So we did a standalone episode about a week and a half ago that was about the Judge Bledsoe ruling that he is not going to obviously be dismissing or staying that case. So he did dismiss part of that case, but not all of that case. We also learned now that Judge Bledsoe is going to be retiring at the end of the year.
Yeah.
That could put a little rinky-dink into what's going on there. We'll have to wait and see.
It could. I when I saw that, I was like, oh boy, is he going to be able to finish this case? But then I was seeing some speculation that I guess sometimes retired judges can continue on with cases. So I guess that maybe that's up in the air if he would continue.
Why the hell would he want to do that?
Well, they sometimes like to see things through. So that'll be interesting. But hopefully all this will be done and wrapped up before he retires.
I think that's wishful thinking, but it would be awfully kind of him if he were to stay on. I mean, he certainly knows a lot, and not that judges could get up to speed, I think, fairly quickly on this. But anyway, it'd be nice to maybe see him have it through the end. And then obviously we had last Friday, Judge Gravely, who is a new name I have to remember, Gravely here in Pickens County, South Carolina. I did see some items, and I believe it was the ACC attorney who does a lot of cases in front of this judge, Gravely, and he said it's very unlikely for this judge to rule from the bench.
Yeah.
Well, he ruled from the bench.
Yeah.
He's like, I heard enough, and he's more of the Judge Bledsoe type. He obviously does his homework. He knows what the briefs say. He keeps it short. I think this was the shortest hearing of all of them right now, shorter than even Judge Bledsoe, certainly much, much shorter than our buddy down in Leon County, Judge Cooper. So yes, he did rule from the bench. He said that Clemson did establish a case for specific jurisdiction. That is not surprising. And he said complaints made by FSU and Clemson are, in his mind, substantially different. We've talked about both of these lawsuits, and there are some differences there. They're both kind of getting at the same thing, but they're coming at them differently. So he did not dismiss, nor did he stay the case there in South Carolina. So it's going to be moving forward as well. I'm sure there will be an appeal because we have to appeal everything. I haven't seen that actually hit yet, but I'm sure there will be an appeal coming, and they did. I know I was like, maybe ACC won't appeal. Yeah, they probably will. Well, yeah, or Clemson, I'm sorry. Yeah. They appealed the Bledsoe decision. So everything goes through the appeal process. So anything you want to add to Clemson, and then we'll get to some FSU stuff.
Do we want to get into like the Big 12 McMurphy stuff yet, or is that?
I'll do that out. Yeah, okay. Let's do that with the FSU.
So I have nothing on the Clemson and the court cases.
So some news today, and I got on X right at the right time, and I was checking my emails right at the right time, and I am now on, Steve. Remember, for those of you that have watched most of our FSU episodes, especially our A.G. Moody episodes, I was giving her a hard time because I reached out to them and they would not get back to me. It took them weeks to get back to me. I'm on their short list of people to email. I got an email from AG Moody's office, basically when this thing dropped, when they released it into the press. And I got that right up on X. I know other people were kind of doing it too. But yeah, so anyway, what did it say? Well, it said that she has an agreement with the ACC and ESPN to get the documents she was looking for. And so my first question is, okay, are these going to be redacted? What are these? So I did have an communication with one of the people at the AG's office there in Florida. And they said they will release whatever they receive. And yes, it can be redacted under the Florida public records laws. So, there's going to be a lot of ink, I think, on these when you go to print them out, because I'm guessing there's going to be an awful lot of black on these documents that is redacted. I think the question will be, does AG Moody pursue this further to question the redactions? That's going to be the question. I had some nice back and forth with a subscriber on Twitter, kind of asking these questions of what does that mean? What does this mean? So we're going to see if AG Moody is okay. Hey, she got what she wanted. She can tell, again, her taxpayers and the residents of Florida, I got them to do this. Or is she really going to push the case forward? I know we have both of our friends, David McKenzie and Doug Rohan, both thinking she should be happy with what she got and not pursue this any further. Remember, the hearing on this was supposed to be July 22nd, which I actually was looking forward to. I wanted to hear what the heck they were going to say. I think they both said, hey, we'll just do what we have to do and we'll move on. Kind of a win-win, if you want to call it that, because it was getting kind of ugly there. Do you have any thoughts on that? Do you have any thoughts on if Moody's going to be okay with a bunch of redactions?
So my first thought is, if this is a fully redacted version and the ACC can redact whatever they want, then what is the point of all this? Like, we already have redacted versions. Now, will she just take a win and say, hey, I fought for this and this is what I got? Maybe she will. Because again, I really think that it's important we stay out of politics, the realm of politics in general, but it's important to remember that people like A.G. Moody, the governors, whoever, they are politicians. They're elected politicians. Yeah. So you can't just think of as strictly a lawyer or prosecutor or whatever. Attorney General in Florida is an elected position. So you have to look at her as a politician. So will she just take that win, and maybe she'll see what the reaction is to the public in the state of Florida? Yeah. Do they say, "Oh yeah, great job," or do they say, "Well, this is BS, man. This was pointless. What did we even accomplish here?" So I think that's going to really determine your second question. Sure. If she can stage this as a win in any way, I think that would be smart from the politician side.
Well, and trust me, her media release was absolutely couched as a, I got it.
Yes.
We're out.
Yes.
I mean, there was nothing about redaction. She didn't get into any of that. She's like, here's the list of documents, and I think there was 6 of them. It was the original one from 2010, a couple amendments to 2016. Look at me, guys. I got I got it for you. I win.
But once
nobody knows what that means.
Yes, and once they're seen and once they're released, what's the reaction to that? Do fans in the state of Florida, do they say, well, this was pointless, this was a waste of time? So I think that's going to have a big determining factor on, does she push farther? Because I thought it was interesting the way it was under Florida law. It could be redacted under the terms of Florida law. Yeah. Like, they had to point that out. So we'll see if that goes further.
Yeah. Genetics asks, isn't the case going to be dismissed? Yes, I think the hearing and what to get the documents. Yes, that's a done deal according to this.
They came to
a settlement. An agreement. There's a settlement, if you want to call it that, that they're going to get. There would be potentially another case, another issue. I wouldn't think it'd be the writ of mandamus. It would more be about, well, I don't know what it would be, because I was shocked she used a writ of mandamus, but it would be an issue with them providing a document to which she would say did not follow the proper sunshine law redactions because of whatever, exemptions, trade secrets, all that kind of stuff. That's kind of the question. But yes, as we sit here right now, it's kind of dismissed. Nothing more to talk about, hopefully at all. I'm done with that one. Let's move on to actually figuring this crap out. So let's get to Brett McMurphy.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. It is hot. Holy cow, people are falling off their chairs reading this thing. I have a couple thoughts, and I'll let you start, Steve. Was there anything, and of course this comes right after. Let me preface it by saying, this report comes, I think, was it released Monday?
I thought yesterday, but it might have been.
It was either Monday or Tuesday. And holy cow, it just setting the world afire. And this is about 5 days after you did your kind of update from what you're hearing from Penn State. So what was your first thought when you saw this news and actually then read the article?
So I want to go back a little bit because last week what got us talking about this was Paul Feinbaum going on,
right,
and him saying, from the SEC perspective that they didn't have a spot in the SEC, and then he talked about the Big Ten and talked about AAU and how Florida State could not get into the Big Ten because they weren't AAU members. So that was what originally prompted me to kind of talk about this. I will say everything. Well, first of all, I follow Brent McMurphy. I followed him for a long time. Excellent reporting. He has good sources all over the country and all these different stories. So I'm not going to disparage him at all because I think he's doing a good job reporting and he's putting out the information that he's getting. So I read the article where he put out that information, and then I also watched. There was an interview with him. I think at Media Days.
Yep.
It's like a panel, like a roundtable discussion. And I think so. I really think that some of it. Well, first of all, we started hearing this. Big 12 news recently.
Right.
We started hearing, okay, now that it's the ACC or the Florida State and Clemson to the Big 12. Didn't make sense to either one of us. I don't think it really makes sense to anyone. So that was kind of the first wave. I'm not going to say it's misinformation, but a little bit of kind of a cat and mouse game, whatever. All of a sudden, there was all this big hubbub about the Big 12. And really, when you look at it, it doesn't make sense. Would Florida State spend all this money, go through all this stuff, just to go to another non-P2 conference,
right.
where they're still going to be well behind the Big Ten and the SEC and the money that they're making there. So that was kind of the first stage of this. And then we have this McMichael reporting. Honestly, I really feel like this is part of the negotiation phase. My contacts still seem to think that definitely Florida State will have a place in the Big Ten eventually. That's another thing we talked about in the last episode was timing. I think a big part of the problem between the Big Ten and Florida State right now, I can't really speak to Clemson so much, but as far as Florida State, like we said in last week's episode, Florida State wanted to be out of the ACC as of last August, okay? Yeah. They want to go now. They want out. They just want out. Okay. Whereas the Big Ten, I know that the Big Ten that there's interest. There's mutual interest. They've already kind of started some of the process, but the Big Ten has a different timeline, from what I understand. The Big Ten would rather see this go a little bit farther out. Well, first of all, they don't want to do anything until Florida State has their media rights, which makes sense. Absolutely. They don't want to involve themselves in any lawsuits or anything like that.
Nobody will.
Nobody will.
And that's the easy out for anybody right now.
Exactly.
That's honestly the easy out for anybody that's trying to opine on this.
Exactly. So I think a big part is the timing. It's a negotiation regarding timing and then how much. Oregon and Washington were able to get in at 50 cents on the dollar. They had to basically take a smaller amount because they didn't have a network partner at the time giving them that full amount.
Right.
So some of the quotes we're seeing right now, I think, are from legitimate sources, and I think it's all a part of that process of negotiation. The when, the how much, and all that. Now, if you read McMurphy's quotes in there and you listen to what he says, he basically says, well, Florida State doesn't have a spot in the SEC or the Big Ten. But to me, there's like a hidden statement at the end of there, and it's as of right now, okay? Because later on, then he goes to say, but when the ACC implodes or when the ACC falls apart, they will have a spot then. So what does that tell you? He's saying they don't have a spot now, but they will have a spot later. And so I think I take his words not as the Big Ten never wants Florida State. They would rather take them a little bit later when they get closer to the next media deal where there's new money being invested, and then also after they have their legal problems taken care of, which to me makes total sense. It's standard operating procedure, like you said before. Nobody is going to say, no one's going to go on record or even talk to a reporter off the record anonymously and say, yes, we definitely want them right now, when they're still involved in these legal issues. So that's just kind of my general thought. I believe strongly from what I'm hearing, Florida State has a spot in the Big Ten eventually. Maybe not exactly when they want it. And we've talked about that before. We had a lot of Florida State fans 6 months ago that were like, we're leaving now and we're going to be in the Big Ten next year.
Right.
And I said at the time, I pumped the brakes and said, that's not going to happen. At the earliest, we're looking at 26, 27. I think if the Big Ten had their way, it'd be maybe 29 or 30 because that's when they're at the next contract window, the next TV negotiation window. That's when they get some new money in. And there's probably going to be a compromise somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the things we're hearing in the media from Paul Feinbaum, from McMurphy, from other outlets is part of that negotiation process. So that's my thoughts on that.
And your opinion is, because I had some texting with you yesterday,
yes.
Your opinion is that Florida State will be in the Big Ten.
Yes.
That's your opinion.
Yes.
Okay.
So, and I always do.
And I don't want to get that gray from what you had said
Yes.
on the last episode. This is now just your opinion on
Correct.
what you think is going to happen with Florida State.
And so I always try and be clear on what the information is that I'm getting from contacts at Penn State. So that information I'm getting from them is, one, there's already been an expression of mutual interest between Florida State and Big Ten through back channels. It's not going to be the official, the commissioner getting on the phone with their university president. Through back channels, I know that there's already mutual interest. I know they've talked about, again, through back channels, some of the logistics of how that would happen. They've talked about the timing. They've talked about all of that. So that's things that I know that have been passed on to me. My opinion is, and where my best guess on this is that yes, Florida State will be that 19th member of the Big Ten. I think it'll have. I don't see it before 2026.
Yeah,
definitely. I think 2027 is a good time frame. I think the Big Ten will maybe try and push them off and hold them off as long as they can. But again, definitely not until they can get their legal battles settled. So that's kind of the difference between the information I'm getting from my contacts and my opinion. Sure. There's a little bit of difference there.
Yeah. So a couple things that stood out to me. So he had quoted Sankey's quote where, they kind of asked him, his response was, "We are focused on our 16, period." Mm-hmm. And I'm like, no shit.
Right.
Every commissioner is going to say that.
Yep.
Everybody's going to say that's not a quote. I mean, it's a quote, but that's not news. Everybody's going to say that.
It's boilerplate language.
Exactly. Push that to the side. It's meaningless. I mean, it's not meaningless, but he's not going to say anything more than that. It's crazy. The other thing you mentioned, and I have been saying this on Twitter a lot the past week-ish, when we kind of dropped our last live episode, was that, there's, and really with this whole Big 12 talk, that's where I've been saying, nobody, this is what I said to one of the responses was, FSU knows where they're headed, or where they think they can be headed, in order to move forward with this. And it's not the Big 12.
No.
You're not doing this for a lateral move. Nobody would do this. Although I said to one of the people, if they are, then every fan and alumni should be uber pissed at this university for doing what they're doing. But they're not. Like, to say that they are is just being completely disingenuous with what they're doing. So the only other thing I wanted to bring up was he used, he quoted several people here that said, not a good partner. FSU's not a good partner. They're disruptive. We don't know if they can be trusted. He used a lot of this lingo that he says he heard from from sources. He didn't say different, but from sources, and he kind of repeated, I think, some of the quotes in his article. So it could have been one person for all I know. I don't know. But first of all, when I read that, to me that sounds like low level talk. Yeah. Like, no, I don't think certainly no president is going to be like, oh, they're not a good partner. No, if a president said that, I would be shocked.
Yeah.
That's low level talk, in my opinion. That's not decision maker talk. They wouldn't say it like that. I don't even think they'd say it, quite frankly. So some of the stuff he put in there, especially with that, I mean, you can go back in history and look at, hell, you could say USC maybe wasn't a good part. Texas, you could say that about a whole bunch of people. But that's kind of hindsight bias, isn't it? I don't know.
Yes, and the best example of this, right? And he's saying that Big Ten sources are saying that Florida State is not a good partner. Okay, what did the Big Ten do 3 years ago? They signed an agreement or announced an agreement with the PAC.
Yes,
an alliance agreement where they were going to protect each other, join forces, have cross-conference games, and the whole thing was to stabilize college football and protect it protect the two conferences. 9 months later, they announced they're poaching the top two brands from the pack in their number one market. So if everybody was worried about partnering with people who were willing to move to better themselves, then nobody would be moving. But we just see this constant realignment, this constant churn. Because and you know, anybody could say the same thing about the Big Ten that these sources are saying about Florida State right now.
Yep. Well, you can say that. Look back at history. You could say that an awful lot.
Yep.
So you got to kind of push that. For me, I push that off to the side a lot. I don't put any stock into that. So that's about all we have, I think, for that Brett McMurphy thing. Not a whole lot to talk about there. I do want to, John said, one possible reason, because he's not saying it would happen, but one possible reason could be the private equity piece. New to this says, doubtful. Good to have you guys on here. And then we've got a San Diego State University. Hang on here, Lewis. I got some good Mountain West stuff coming up next. We're going to finish this one thought, and then we're getting right to the Mountain West. But where was I going with that? Oh, the private equity piece. Could be a reason. Yeah, it could be a reason. What I'm getting out of this private equity stuff is more so kind of the issues that schools they're starting to have and going to continue to be having with the admissions issue. Yeah. I don't think it's so much athletics. Now, some of it could be athletics, but there's an
enrollment cliff.
Yes, an enrollment cliff. That's part of it. Certainly private equity to kind of keep up with the Joneses in terms of capital. So, new stadiums and all that kind of stuff. Is that part of the reason? And I'll throw into that where we may be headed with revenue sharing.
Right.
Like, that's new money that these schools... Now, for some of the big P2 schools, chump change, not a big deal. But maybe for the lower-ish power schools and certainly the G schools... I don't know. That private equity may just be to keep pace with everybody else. It's not additional necessarily. What are your thoughts?
I totally agree. And the thing is, right now, private equity is being associated with the Big 12 because their commissioner, Brett Yormack, I think it's
brought it up.
And is looking and talking about it as a possibility. Well, here's the thing. If Florida State was going to go that route, they could easily save themselves hundreds of millions of dollars, stay in the ACC, and they could get private equity on their own to invest in their program.
I think that they're looking at that as well.
I think so. That's something that they've been talking about. So I it's a good point, John. That could be something that attracts them. I just don't know that going to the Big 12 is going to get them more funds than it would be just staying in the ACC.
Yeah. Well, let's get to the Mountain West. I have several things I want to talk about. I am going to monopolize the next couple items, Steve, before we get to the big. I pushed you to the backside since I got cut off last week. And I made the topic list, so that's what happens.
That's cool.
And you were okay with it, so yes. I'm down. So the first thing I want to do, before we get to the out-of-conference rankings, we have another reveal. An AD interview reveal, Mountain West Conference, Director of Athletics. Steve and I just recorded the interview about 3 hours ago. We're going to drop it tomorrow. The Boise State Director of Athletics, Jeremiah Dickey, sat down with us. It's about a 37-minute conversation, answered some great questions for us. We really appreciated his time. So we will be dropping Jeremiah Dickey, Athletic Director for Boise State University, tomorrow on our channel.
I'll just say, I'm going to tease it a little bit.
Tease it.
Because I'm still excited. I'm still, the hair's still standing up. I got goosebumps from that interview. It's a fantastic interview. We asked him about Ashton Genty, a potential Heisman candidate this year, and his Heisman campaign. We asked him about the college football playoff and possibly getting a team from the Mountain West in. We talked about revenue sharing, and I'm not going to say what it was, but there was something in one of his questions I think is really interesting that could make national headlines in one of his answers. Our last interview with Mr. Classy down there at Fresno State hit the D1 ticker.
That's right.
And I think there's a possibility that this one may as well, especially because of one of his answers, I think it has something really interesting in it.
We also talk about the Mountain West.
Yeah.
Gloria Navarez, who we're both very big fans of. And we ask him about the pack.
Yeah.
And what's going on with the Beavs and Cougs and the scheduling agreement and all that kind of stuff. We went there. He answered the question. Check it out tomorrow. I know we've got Beavs and Cougs fans on. We've got JEH. We've got Squeeze Money if he's still on. I know we've got some Mountain West people on. Tracy, Lewis. So, yes, you're going to love the interview. It's great. We really appreciate him spending a lot of quality time with us. He gave us really thoughtful, long, good stuff. Good answers. Anyway, all right. So, we're excited to let you guys know that. That's 2 in a row for us, Steve.
Yeah.
2 weeks in a row. What am I going to do? We don't have any more lined up.
You're gonna have to line some more up.
Crap, I got to get on it. That's all we got lined up right now. We have some more special guests lined up, but it's going to be a little bit closer to college football season. All right, so we'll get to that in a little bit. So, if our producer's ready, I am ready to jump to our OOC. He gave me I'm ready. I'm always ready because I'm PW Baker Productions.
That's right.
Shout out to him. He's kicking butt as always. And PW Baker, we had some, they appreciated the countdown at the beginning.
Yes.
Steven, one of our longtime viewers, gave it a thumbs up. So, OOC, out of conference rankings for the Mountain West, I am ranking the top 10, and these are in order for me from the 10th to number 1, which I think is the most interesting out of conference game for the Mountain West this year. So, our producer's going to help us out. The first one I have here is number 10, Boise State versus Oregon, week 2. Now you say, well, why is that on here? It may not be a close game. I think it's a great game to have national attention on the Mountain West. I know this stupid game got relegated to, was it Paramount? I think it's on Paramount. But whatever. They're still playing Oregon. I want them to have a great showing here. And man, Oregon, one of people's top, 2 or 3 teams in the country for crying out loud. So I'm not expecting a win, certainly. But, just a solid showing here could set up nicely for both Boise State and for the Mountain West moving forward as we're in this new environment of a 12-team playoff and 1 guaranteed for the G5. So, what happened to JEH?
He thought the countdown was going to blow his computer.
The ticking time bomb. The ticking time bomb. Well, now you guys know it's not going to blow up. You guys know that...
it kind of reminded me of, remember the 24? Remember
it was 24,
Yeah, that was good.
I think at the end it's like, and then it does sound like it's going to blow up. We won't do that to you. John says, Kansas State fan here. That's awesome. Mom attended Wyoming. Well, I love your mom. I don't know her. Love her. Plan on attending the BYU game in Laramie. That is fantastic. We're talking about trying to get to Laramie. We haven't picked the date yet. BYU is one of the games we're looking at. That should be a phenomenal game. And that's probably on my list. So stay tuned, John. Find out where that BYU-Wyoming game is at on this list of top 10.
If we go to that, we'll make John this promise right now. We're going to meet up, and we're going to have a cold beverage in Laramie together.
We'll bring some swag along.
Yeah.
All right, number 9. Are we ready? Number 9, and you picked this game as well. Fresno State versus Michigan, week 1. I'm excited for this game. I am excited for this game to be a good football game. Mm-hmm. I don't want to jinx it. Yeah. And that'd be like 50-10 or something stupid. And we're actually going to get to Fresno State in a little bit. Some news out of Fresno State. But I have them at number 9, week 1. Great way to kick things off. Again, massive national attention for the Mountain West. Week 1, you've got Fresno versus Michigan. Week 2, you've got Boise versus Oregon. If I'm taking 2 teams from the Mountain West to go against some of the big boys, those are the 2 teams I want.
Yep.
Those are the 2 teams I want. So I like that. Really glad to see Fresno State getting some awesome national attention. It's the evening game on NBC at the big house, right? Like it is big time on week 1.
Both the teams are playing very well, could be ranked in the top 5 in the country, with the initial rankings.
Yeah, so that's awesome. Now, number 8, some people might question this, but number 8, I have Wyoming, and they're going south to Arizona State week 1. Again, I like this game, number 1, because I think Wyoming has a solid shot of winning this game. Mm-hmm. And again, week 1, you get a Mountain West team, maybe beating a Big 12 team. Fantastic for the conference. And so that's the main reason. I just like the matchup. I don't necessarily like them going south to Arizona State. If this is Wyoming, I'd feel a little bit more comfortable. But I like the matchup, and I think it should be a really good game on week 1. So number 7. And I had to have a service academy game. I'm not going to put both Air Force and Army and Air Force and Navy in this. I'm only going to pick one. So I picked at number 7, Air Force and Navy, because I think Navy's going to have the better team this year than Army. You never know with the service academy, especially when they play each other. You have no freaking clue. But I took the Navy Air Force game at number 5. Should be a really good game. And, I'm still trying to get a handle on Air Force. You're seeing them kind of all over the board. Great coach. They always know how to work that program into above 500. I haven't quite gotten there yet with them. They're going to be a little difficult for me, but I like this game. Number 6, Colorado versus Colorado State. Again, interstate rivalry, crazy game last year. It's just a silly game, a game that Colorado State should have won, quite frankly. Just a huge comeback for Colorado last year. You can absolutely think Colorado State wants blood in this game. They want to avenge that loss. I think it could be a good game. And again, week 3, another solid Mountain West team versus a Colorado team here. And I like the matchup. So going to number 5, we have Air Force versus Baylor. Again, week 3. So I like this. Again, this is kind of like my number 8 pick with the Wyoming-Arizona State. I like this matchup. I like Air Force versus Baylor. I could see Air Force winning this game. Again, another strong game to start the season here for the Mountain West. And going there down to Baylor and winning that game would be huge. So, I just picked 6 games of the Mountain West. If they could win, scratch the Navy Air Force game, but of the other 5 that I mentioned, if they can win 2 or 3 of those games, massive for the Mountain West. And I think it's doable. I think 2 or 3 wins out of those 5 games is not shooting for the stars. I think it's actually attainable. So let's go to number 4, Fresno State at UCLA. This is week 14. Interesting games this year in week 14. You had a few, Steve, last week when we were talking about this. I think this could be interesting on multiple fronts. Number 1, I think it's going to be a close game, assuming Fresno's healthy. Mikey's able to be the quarterback and all that kind of stuff. And depending on the season that they have, could be a pretty big game for Fresno State if they have any sort of hopes of making a college football playoff game. So I had to have this kind of up there being a week 14 game.
And there's a good chance that UCLA could be really struggling, not only this year, but especially at that point in the season. They're kind of a whole rebuild at this point. So you could have one team that's just ready to get out of the season and go home to mom and dad for the holidays, and the other team has huge things to play for.
Yes, Luis, Fresno State's coach. I'm going to get to that after I get to my OOC games about just the update for the Mountain West. That'll be the first thing I talk about is Coach Tedford there. We'll talk about that. So, our buddy David Jurgensen's back. He says the Baylor coach is likely coaching for his job this year.
Dave Aranda, he came in the first year there, did real well, and has had a couple kind of stinkers of a season. I think he's basically taken over. I read somewhere he's taken over the defensive play calling this year. He was the DC at LSU before, so I agree. That could be a huge make or break game for Baylor.
Yeah, and I'll read just a couple other comments since we're on a mini break here. We agree with you, Steven. Boise's got a great shot at the G5 spot. He says he's their pick for the G5 spot. Definitely a strong pick, no doubt about it. That college football guy, Bill, says Fresno has some bookend games on their schedule. They certainly do. And that's going to the telltale for them is going to be what happens with those bookend games. I'm really anxious for the first one though. Yeah. And then Air Force could beat Baylor in my opinion. Totally agree, Steven, and that's why I have them there at number 5. I think that could be a good game.
JEH is a 20-year Army vet. I'm a 22-year Navy vet, so it's okay. We can get along all year round, except for that the 1 week in December. We won't get along so well.
No wonder he was hating on that Navy Air Force pick. Yeah. He wanted me to take Army on that. But all right, let's get to number 3, the game that got brought up a little bit earlier, Wyoming versus BYU. And you know what? I have this flippy-flopped. I have this wrong. It's at Wyoming. I have BYU being home, so I apologize. I have an error on that. But it is at Wyoming.
Yep.
Huge game. They are there for blood. They want to nobody freaking likes BYU. No, I don't know who likes BYU. Other than Mormons and BYU, I don't think anybody likes freaking BYU. But it's a huge game. Again, another week 3 game. I mean, and we're going to hear me talk about this. when I get to the Mountain West update. There's so much to like about the front end of this Mountain West schedule. Now, could they just crap the bed and lose every game? Yeah, I guess they could. But they're putting themselves out there. They are trying to make a name for the Mountain West, and they're trying to get themselves in the college football playoff talk. So I love it, and I love this game. Wyoming versus BYU. Fantastic.
So someone's asking if you're going to have any UNLV games on here.
Well, let's get to number 2.
All right.
UNLV versus Houston. David, who said that? Oh,
Tommy Gunn.
Tommy Gunn was asking about it. Yep, I got him right here. UNLV versus Houston, my number 2 most important game, week 1. Yet again, I like this matchup. People are going to continue to sleep on UNLV. I know they did better last year than people thought, but they're just UNLV. Like, they're not Boise State. They're not Fresno State. They're UNLV. I like the matchup versus Houston. Yet another early game here where a team can really perform well for the Mountain West. And so, yes, I am picking UNLV, and I like this game in week 1. Last one. You'll love it.
Okay.
Week 14. Possibly for Steven's pick into the college football playoff, Boise State versus Oregon State. Week 14, it could be a win-and-you're-in situation for the Broncos. I had to make it my number 1 because of what the importance of that game could actually be. So that is my number 1, Week 14, out-of-conference game, the Broncos versus the Beavs. And I wonder what JEH has to say about that. We'll find out.
I bet he's going to say he wants Oregon to go 1-11.
No, I mean about that.
But he's going to say he wants Oregon to go 1-11 and Michigan State to go 12.
I understand. Yes. So I had one honorable mention. And this goes to my UNLV commenter because I did only have UNLV on here once, and I had about 14 to 15 games that I really kind of broke out and I'm like, okay, I got to figure out how to do these. And some of them, I kind of chopped a few off easy. I did have an honorable mention here, and I will bring it up. Syracuse versus UNLV was my honorable mention game. So if I was to rank 11, they would have been my 11th. But Syracuse versus UNLV, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Syracuse. I mean, they got Kyle McCord there now, and I guess they're going to be pretty damn good. But
they brought in some players.
We'll find out. So that is my honorable mention game. So I had to get UNLV on here twice.
David Jorgensen is asking about the coach. Is it Stepford? How do you pronounce? What's his last name? Tedford. Coach Tedford stepping down. Here's the thing: is he's had quite a few leaves of absence for sickness and health reasons. Yes. I'm gonna great coach has run a great program.
Yep.
For me, and you would know better. You'd have a better feel on it, but I have some faith that they have somebody identified, to have contingency plans, that they're ready for this to go into their season. And when you have an experienced quarterback like Mikey Keene, that can make all the difference. So it's a shame that's what's happened with coach having to step down with these health problems when they're set up for a good season. But I just have some faith that they have a contingency plan in place.
Yeah. I want to get back to Tommy's question. So he asked about UNLV. And he's saying, what about at Kansas and Syracuse? So I mentioned the one that I mentioned. I mentioned the honorable mention at Syracuse. Kansas was in one of the group that I cut out. Mm-hmm. And I only cut them out because, unfortunately, Tommy, I do not give UNLV a great chance to win. And we'll see what happens in showing at that game. But that was one of the ones that I had. But they got on the chopping block, and they're on the paper on the floor somewhere because I cut them off.
I think it sets up interesting. We have Boise and probably Fresno as two of the teams that we think are really going to be competing for the Mountain West Championship.
Yeah.
And both of them start the season with a huge out of conference game.
Yeah.
And then they both have pretty substantial out of conference games towards the end, with the Oregon State game that you mentioned, and then Fresno playing UCLA. I think, is that the same week, or it's later in the season?
The Fresno UCLA is 14.
Week 14. At the end of the season. Both of them kind of have bookend games there that are opportunities to put them on that national landscape.
Yep, bookend out of conference games, no doubt about it. And UNLV's right there. I mean, they're a solid 3, I think. So I don't want to leave them out of the conversation there. They are definitely near the top of the Mountain West as well. So let's get to some Mountain West updates. We talked about Coach Tedford. He is retiring for health reasons, and yes, He has had health reasons here as of late. He actually didn't coach in the bowl game because of health reasons. I was waiting to see. I was figuring he may retire and just step down. He didn't. He came back to the team after the new year. But in his write-up, he just said after some doctor visits and things, him and his family, decided that it's time for him to step down. Their interim head coach will be Tim Skipper, who I believe was their DC, if I'm remembering correctly. And I agree with you, Steve. You commented on this about you would think there'd be some plans ahead. You kind of know this isn't a huge surprise.
Yeah.
I'm sure he probably was like, hey, I'll try and give it one more year. Let's have some contingencies for this. So I would certainly think that this isn't going to be a huge change for them. But he's, for those that saw my top 10 coaching Mountain West list, he was number 2. So when you lose a great head coach, no matter how much planning you have, it can have an effect, no doubt. So we'll see how much of an effect that it has. The next piece I want to get to, Steve, is there was a new CBS report. I believe Dennis Dodd wrote it up. I know some people can Dennis Dodd this and Dennis Dodd that. But, he brought up some interesting things here, and it has to do with the Pac-2. And kind of it was about, is the Mountain West kind of cooling on adding the Pac-2 or even merging with or anything with the Pac-2? He mentioned that Gould being the Pac commissioner now, her quote was, "I don't know if the Mountain West thinks they need these 2 schools." And right now, he mentioned, and we've kind of been saying this, I know I've been alluding to this to some degree, the league actually, probably the Mountain West, when I say league, the Mountain West has some leverage right now on the Pac. He also then mentions adding Washington State and Oregon State to the Mountain West from some source, industry source. I don't know what that means, but an industry source says it would add about 10 to 15% in a new media deal. These 2 schools would add 10 to 15% in a new media deal. And also an industry source has said that the Pac name may not have the revenue stream. He kind of cautioned on whether the Pac name still has that revenue stream like it used to, because, the Pac name is who the members are. Well, the members right now are just 2 schools. So, just kind of cooling it down a little bit. Take it for what it's worth. He threw in a couple quotes and things in there. If you want to see it, it's on some CBS website. Again, Dennis Dodd put it up. But I thought I'd talk about that a little bit. Yeah.
Can I comment on that real quick? JH says that he thinks it's all gamesmanship. I agree. I think this is part of the negotiation process. And I think a lot of stuff is basically irrelevant until they start playing each other this season. I think that's what it's really going to come down to when they start playing each other, the scheduling agreement, and everybody gets comfortable. Everyone sees what they can have, what it can be like. And I still think the final solution is going to be that they're going to be together. I mean, yes, and the Beavs and the Cougs, they're going to look at other opportunities. Can they get an invite from the Big 12, from the ACC, whatever? But when we get to a point, if they don't have that opportunity, then it just is going to just make sense to join with the Mountain West in some form or fashion. And I still don't think it matters what that is. The lawyers, the marketing people, whatever, will figure out, yes, is there value in this brand versus the other? Is there value in rebranding? And what can we get from a media value? They'll go through all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't think it matters in the end. But I'm really excited to see them play this year. A lot of really cool games. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I just think there's some really good opportunities there.
Yeah. Something, again, we talked about with A.D. Dickey, so you can wait and see what he had to say about the potential future of the Pac and the Mountain West. And the last thing I want to say, I know Gloria Navarez gave kind of her presser at the media days. I have not had a chance to really dig into that and listen to that. There's a couple interviews that I have not yet had a chance to dive into, and I think we'll have to do maybe some standalone episodes, maybe just a Mountain West kind of update episode on that. We can maybe record that over the weekend. But something that I heard her say several times, and clearly it's one of her talking points right now, he said it a lot with in the media days, is that the Mountain West leads all group of 6 leagues in playing P4 teams in 2024. The Mountain West is playing 35. I just listed a whole bunch of them in my top OOC list. But 35 games the Mountain West is playing against P teams in 2024. I think the next one was like 26, I believe, if I remember. I didn't write it down. I think it was like 26. So pretty big gap between, the Mountain West kind of pushing their teams out there, the coaches taking on some of these teams. And I think it's great. I think it gets you the national attention. If you can play a close game or even pull those upsets, we saw. I know the Bulldogs didn't like us calling the Purdue game last year an upset, but they were the underdog.
Yeah,
I think it was 3.5 points or whatever,
right?
And they won. And then you saw Wyoming; they did pull the upset there against Texas Tech. I mean, it just churns that positive discussion about the Mountain West, and I like it. You got to put yourself out there. Yep. No risk, no reward, right? You can play it safe. Who the hell wants that? Risk it a little bit.
And I think it really sets up an interesting dynamic when we get to the CFP time. Let's say we have a 10-2 Mountain West champion, whether it's a UNLV, a Boise, a Fresno, whatever, 10-2 Mountain West champion, and you compare their resume, or even 11-1, as far as the regular season schedule, compare that to a Liberty who's playing in Conference USA, who can basically get out of bed, play in their pajamas, and go undefeated this season. So if you have it would be a 12-2 with the Mountain West,
right?
12-2 Mountain West champion versus a 13-0 Liberty Conference USA champion. I just think that there's a big difference there in their resume and the schedule, and I think the Mountain West taking on all these extra power games, I think is an opportunity to build that resume. Now, will the committee look at that and take that into account? We'll see, and I think it'll make for a really interesting conversation.
I'm upset that you brought up Liberty. But peed in my lemonade.
But I think it's something that is important to keep that perspective and keep beating that drum all year.
Yeah.
Again, if you have a Boise State who beats everybody on their schedule but except Oregon, and wins the Mountain West championship,
I know.
There's no way in hell that an undefeated Liberty team should get a playoff spot instead of them.
I think our FSU fans are going to tell you what happened.
I know, and they were pissed off, and I'm getting myself pissed off now. So
you did it
I'm going to keep beating the drum.
You did it to yourself. All right, let's go to our next one, the QB rooms in the Big Ten. You're going to rank these suckers.
Yeah.
These are in order.
Yep.
Worst to best.
Okay.
You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's go to the Big Ten.
Okay, can we bring these up on the screen for me? Because I got bad eyes.
Bring it up on the screen.
All right. Okay, yeah. So we're going to talk about quarterback rooms in the Big Ten. Now, this isn't necessarily just the starter. This is I'm looking at the whole QB room. In certain cases, the starter is just it's overwhelming. But in other cases, they really have. There's some teams that really have some good depth here. So we're going to start all the way at the bottom. Number 18. And now what I will say is some of these teams at the bottom are kind of rebuilding. So we don't know exactly what to expect. They have a mixture of like transfers and just totally rebuilding.
Yeah.
So some of these have an opportunity that they can really move up these rankings next year. But I'm going to start at the bottom, and I think JEH will be happy about this. Michigan State, they are bringing in Aiden Childs, I think is how you pronounce it. And he did a great job at Oregon State before. He was a high-ranked quarterback there. People were really excited about him. Yep. But we don't know what he's going to do at Michigan State and in the Big Ten. We just have no idea, and they're totally rebuilding. They're starting from scratch, so I'm giving him plenty of room to move up. So I'm putting him at the bottom. And the next, I'm putting Mike Wright. I'm putting Northwestern. They got Mike Wright. He was a transfer, and Jack. I think it's Lash at Northwestern. Again, they were awesome last year. They punched way above their weight.
Yes.
But in many ways, they're still kind of rebuilding here. They have plenty of room to move up, but I'm going with Northwestern near the bottom here at 17. So moving up to 16, Wisconsin. Here's the thing. Tyler Van Dyke came in as a transfer from Miami. A couple of years ago, Tyler Van Dyke was the ACC Freshman of the Year.
Yeah.
Looked amazing. Looked like the next coming of Dan Marino, whatever. But he was awful last year in Miami. Just didn't even look like he was a Division I quarterback.
Yeah.
I don't know what the deal was down there. There was a lot of dysfunction in Miami. He's coming up into a Wisconsin team that, I mean, they've been rebuilding. I think they have a solid foundation. This is one of those where Tyler Van Dyke, I think, could be a top 3 quarterback in the Big Ten, or literally could lose his job and never play Division I football again.
Okay.
Like, I think it could go either way. There's just a lot of turmoil there. So we'll see how that goes. UCLA. Now, I think you're going to remember this kid, Ethan Garbers. He's the kid who came in. He was hurt.
Yeah.
Came into the second half of the who were they playing against?
He was throwing dimes.
Yeah, was that against Boise?
Boise.
Yeah, in the playoff game, was just slinging it. So they're really rebuilding that team. He played, I think, started 3 games last year and was pretty solid. Then he was hurt and he was out, and he came in the second half of that bowl game, looked good. So again, another guy who I think, he could really move up these charts, to next year. Okay, the next team, number 14, Purdue, Hudson Card. He had been the starter down in Texas before. He came up to Purdue last year. Mm-hmm. He didn't play real well last year. Last year I was down on Purdue. They were rebuilding, starting a defensive coach coming over from Illinois, just to not play well. I think he will improve this year and play a little bit better. We'll see. The jury's still out, so I still have them in the bottom half.
Okay.
13 is really interesting. Minnesota, they brought in this guy, Max Brosmer, I think is his name, transferred from New Hampshire, was basically like the D2, was a finalist for like the D2 Heisman Trophy version of the Heisman Trophy. Okay. Put up massive numbers at New Hampshire, was just really good. I don't know if they're D2 or if they're FCS, but a lower. He was really good at a lower level in New Hampshire last year. Massive numbers. He comes in. I don't know what it's going to be like there in Minnesota, what their offense is going to look like this year. I don't know that he's going to put up quite those numbers, but who knows? Maybe he comes in and he's the next Kurt Warner. We'll see.
Okay. I'm surprised you have him above Ethan Garbers.
Well, the thing is that Ethan Garbers has a very small sample size. He had 3 games starting in that second half. And you have said before, Boise with their secondary,
they
can have some issues.
But it wasn't a secondary issue. It wasn't blown coverages. It was putting the football in the exact spot that needed one-on-one coverage.
Yes.
The dude's on the back.
He did that for one half of one game.
It was pretty damn good.
It was pretty awesome. So we'll see what he can do this year. Brosmer has definitely much more of a resume. I mean, a really great resume, but it was at a lower level, so it's hard to see how it's going to translate.
Okay.
Okay, moving back up, Maryland. I'm down on Maryland this year. Talia, they lost Talia. He ended up, I think he broke some records for the all-time Big Ten passing numbers and passing numbers, things like that. They're starting all over at the bottom.
Yep.
They got Billy Edwards and Cameron Edge. I'm not even sure if they've named a starter yet. We'll see, but it's a total rebuild there. So I'm not going to talk about them too much. Illinois. So their starter, Altmaier, was a guy when Illinois played Penn State. They played a good game. Mm-hmm. However, Altmaier just absolutely looked like was awful. I think he threw 5 or 6 interceptions. Yeah, I remember that. Got the crap beat out of him, but he had some other really strong games. Penn State was a top 3 or 4 defense last year, and what Penn State was really good at doing was getting pressure on the quarterback and causing them to make mistakes and throw interceptions and turn the ball over.
Yeah.
And boy, did they ever with him.
Yes.
So he had a terrible nightmare game, but he had some other really solid games. Another year of experience. I'm expecting better things from him.
Okay.
So I got him right there. Got Illinois at 11. Iowa, Cade McNamara, he's back one more year. I think this is like his 9th year of college football. Just a solid quarterback when he's healthy. Nothing spectacular, just solid, and he can pair really well with that Iowa team. They got 3 other guys returning, but they're just guys. Like they're nothing special really in that Iowa quarterback room. Okay. They are depending on Cade McNamara to finally be healthy, get through a season. And if he does, Iowa's schedule really sets up well. They can have a really good season if he can stay healthy all year.
Yeah.
So the next one, I really struggled with Nebraska. I have Nebraska at 9. Here's the thing. They are bringing in a guy. This is more about future potential, I think, because I'm judging the whole room.
Right.
Dylan Raiola, number 1 quarterback in the country last year as far as recruit, was committed to Georgia, flips to Nebraska. Mm-hmm. He may take some lumps this year as a brand new quarterback, true freshman starting, but I think he has massive potential going forward. Could be that guy who's going to be the next number 1 overall draft pick. I think Nebraska has set him up well. They built a solid team around him. So I don't want to like put all this pressure and say, okay, he's gonna take him to the national championship, win the Heisman or anything like that.
Right.
But I think he'll have some mistakes this year. Obviously, all young quarterbacks do. But I think he will show enough where it's the sky is the limit for that guy.
Okay.
So next one, Rutgers, Kaliak Manis, the
Yes.
Greek rifle.
Yes.
Here's the thing, Kaliak Manis probably not going to play in the NFL. Maybe he's more of like a CFL guy. He's reuniting with Kirk Shiraka, who was his offensive coordinator in Minnesota.
Right.
Played well under him. Again, he's not. The thing about the Big Ten this year is there's a lot of turnover with quarterbacks. So we're in that middle range, but I think Kaliak Manis will be an improvement over the quarterback they had last year. Definitely more of a passer. Not great, not going to set the world on fire, but I think he'll do good within that Kirk Shiraka offense.
Okay.
And then the younger guy, I think it's AJ Sarasi or something, high-rated quarterback recruit coming in. So they have some good potential for the future. Now, Michigan. All right, it's kind of tough. We see them all the way down at number 7. Yeah. Here's the thing: Michigan, their presumed starter, Orji, he has not shown that he can really complete passes yet. Okay, which is important for a quarterback.
Bit of a problem, yeah.
Yes, but in real Big Ten live action, but he is a heck of a runner. And the way Michigan is built, strong on the line, strong defense, strong running game. Honestly, he could probably play the first 5 or 6 games of the season without having to complete very many passes, just to run the ball, be a good athlete, and develop as a quarterback as the season goes along. And they got some other good guys. Jaden Davis, I don't think is going to play this year, or will play really limited. High-rated, true freshman coming in is I think the future at that position. Will be a future starter 2-3 years down the road. So overall, their room, I'm putting them 7th. The next one, I think this is going to be a massive surprise for some of our Big Ten fans, but I know you're going to like it. I know Steven is going to like it.
He's been waiting.
Number 6, Indiana. We got Mr. Rourke. What was his first name again?
Curtis.
Kurt O'Rourke. Fantastic quarterback at Ohio. Honestly, I thought he would have went into the draft last year. Yeah. I think if he would have went into the draft, he would have gotten drafted. It wasn't going to be a first or second round pick or anything,
right.
But I think he would have been drafted. I think he has a future in the NFL. I love him going to Indiana in that Kirk Cignetti offense. Yep. I think, an experienced, talented quarterback playing for an experienced coach who has a history of running good offenses. I think this is going to be a match made in heaven this year. Indiana has a relatively weak schedule outside of 2 or 3 games. I think he's going to put up big numbers, be real successful. I actually thought about having him up higher. I considered him all the way up at 3 or 4.
Wow.
But there's just some teams that have just so much talent at the top.
Right.
But I really am expecting big things out of Rourke. At Indiana, and they got a couple other guys that are just guys there, and we'll see how they develop. Okay, Washington. Will Rogers comes, I think, Mississippi State he was before. Just a decent all-around quarterback. Had some success in that Mike Leach offense. Mm-hmm. Played well. He's going to be at Washington. And they got Williams in that, I think it's Kuykendall, I think is his name, Kuykendall. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but he's a highly rated young quarterback coming in. But I think Will Rogers is going to have some success. I think Washington struggles, but overall, I think they have a pretty solid room there. A guy with a lot of experience. So I really considered putting Indiana up. That was a spot where I could have gone either way. Yeah. Got Washington at 5, and that leads me to number 4, USC. Here's the thing. Lincoln Riley is known as a quarterback whisperer. They have Miller Moss, who looked fantastic in the bowl game. I think he threw 6 touchdown passes last year. Was an improvement over the returning Heisman Trophy winner, Caleb Williams, who I think maybe was the number 1 draft pick, was the highest quarterback taken this last year. Looked fantastic in the bowl game. Now, again, kind of like UCLA's quarterback, let's see it over a season. But I think he's really good. And they also have on the bench Jaden Maeva. Came over. I think he will sit this year behind Miller Moss, at least to begin with. But if there's any struggles, if the team is not meeting expectations, I could see them putting Maeva in and injecting that spark plug into the offense.
Well, I don't follow much USC or Big Ten by much. I don't know any USC. A little bit of Big Ten because of you. But the last that I heard, Mayava was actually he was pushing for the starter role. Now that was back in spring. There's a lot of time left. Maybe it was just, hey, he's even better than we even thought he was going to be, but he's not really going to be the starter. Yeah. Who knows what that meant? But I know I will have an eye on Jaden because of kind of what UNLV did last year with him, and we again very first game. I know we've said a bunch. I apologize. We're broken records, but we knew it from the very first game he came in. He was special.
Yep.
So.
Okay, so moving up, this is really where we get into the nitty-gritty here at the top. I got Penn State at number 3. Just a good, solid quarterback room. Drew Aller, again, a 5-star quarterback. The thing about it is people remember him last year based on like 2 games. The Michigan-Ohio State game, where he just was not able to make the plays to put them in a position to win. But he had a very solid game, a very solid season. I think he was like 25 touchdown passes and 3 interceptions, took care of the ball, did hit some big shots downfield. Maybe not as many as they would have liked, and certainly not in those 2 big games of the year. But I think there's been this weird, Aller sucks kind of thing because he couldn't beat Ohio State and Michigan. Well, you know what? Nobody really could beat Ohio State and Michigan last year. It is what it is. Very talented guy. I see continued progress from him this year. And they got a solid room. Their backup, Prabula, is more of a run threat kind of guy. He reminds me a lot, actually, of Trace McSorley.
Right.
And then they got another highly ranked quarterback behind him in Grunkenmeyer. Also came from Ohio. Not quite the arm strength of Aller, but almost. Really just a fantastic, solid quarterback room there.
Well, and I was just going to say, if you go back down the last couple, you mentioned Indiana, and you could maybe have them up in 3 or 4. I certainly could understand Washington. I don't. And you mentioned that. I struggled with the Washington.
Yeah.
When I look at the rooms for USC and Penn State, I don't see the rooms for Indiana
that's the
being
thing.
above them. So I think you got Indiana about right where you wanted them.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And that's really the calculus that I went through.
Yeah.
And I thought of Rourke. I think he'll be really good, but their room, you don't know. They're rebuilding there.
Yep.
Okay, so moving on from Penn State, these top 2, I could have shuffled them either way. I have Oregon at number 2, bringing in Dylan Gabriel. He will have the most starts under his belt of any D1 quarterback when he takes the reins at Oregon, which is just a complete loaded team. He's got experience. He's got all the physical tools. I don't know if he's a guy that's going to be like a first-round draft pick into the NFL, but I think he's almost perfect for this situation.
Yeah.
I think he can do a lot of what Bo Nix did last year. And then when you combine them, bringing in Dante Moore over from UCLA, I love the room there.
Yep.
Very solid. And again, with their roster, I could have easily put them at number 1. Number 1 and 2, we could flip-flop.
Yeah.
So let's get to number 1. I have Ohio State, the Buckeyes, Will Howard. Will Howard is not the absolute best transfer quarterback that has come in the last couple of years since we started the portal, but he's a very solid transfer quarterback for what Ohio State wants to do. He's a little bit more of an athlete. Yep. He's experienced. He can complete passes and move the offense, but he also brings that extra threat, that dynamic threat, which if you look at Ohio State's best years where they were really successful and winning national championships, a lot of those years, they had an athlete at quarterback that could be that extra challenger. So I have them there. And part of the reason I have Ohio State over Oregon is the room. Yep. They also brought in 2 really good guys, Julian Sand.
Yep.
He was number 2, I think, quarterback. He could have been number 1. Fantastic, is the future there.
100%.
Going to be a top guy. And even their second quarterback they brought in last year, Air Noland. I think maybe he transferred in. He signed with someone else and transferred in, I believe. But another just top flight guy. So for them, I think I like as the starter Dylan Gabriel more than Will Howard.
Yeah.
But the overall room, I like Ohio State better. I think they have the best quarterback room in the Big Ten, possibly in the country.
Yeah.
So that's my rankings. You got any comments?
I agree. I think you got it right with Ohio State. I do. As a room, we're not talking about the starting quarterbacks. I agree with you. As a room, I'm Ohio State number 1.
Yep.
So I'm going to scroll down here, Steve. The last thing we're going to do is talk a little bit about our draft. Hopefully we still have our 2 buddies, Steven and Bill on. Let me scroll up just to see the kind of crap people are giving you.
Yeah, I can't wait to see the comments.
Yeah.
I saw Jorgensen was asking me about DJ Ugalele. I can't remember say his name. And he's like, oh, yeah, that'll be next year when FSU is in the Big Ten.
That's right. There you go. So let's see here. So JEH, he's been getting his butt screamed at for the past 2 days, suggesting that some kind of merger with the Mountain West was likely to happen. It would be bad. That's right at the end of my last doohickey there with the Mountain West. He's talking about the Beaver message boards. Yeah, I think that's probably not surprising. But hey, it's hard sometimes to speak the truth. At least what you think the truth is.
Yeah.
So let's keep going down here real quick. We've got.
Well, Tommy Gunn asks about the chance of OSU and Washington State getting an invite to the ACC. We don't really know or have any information, but the thing is does it's got to be, does it make sense? There's a school of thought that maybe ACC wants to add a West Coast.
Right.
And if they do, then that would make a lot of sense. But we haven't really, other than rumors and fan speculation, we've seen no indication from the ACC and the decision makers there that they are interested in that whatsoever. So he says 10%, I agree. Very low percentage.
Yeah, JEH says slim and none, and I'm heavy on the none.
Yeah.
I was going to say the same. I think 10%'s as high as you want to go. I like the slim to none. Heavy on the none. I don't see it.
It seems like the Big 12 would have been a bit better fit, get into that Pacific Northwest, but they haven't shown any interest either. And if they wanted them, I mean, they could have invited them last week, last month, today, tomorrow, and there's no invitation in the mail as far as I've seen.
Well, David thinks that the Huskers, or not thinks, he's saying the Huskers brought in Jalen Gramstad, a Northwestern College, Iowa player. And then, we got Josh here from Utah State. Good to have you, sir. You know what? We were so hot and heavy on Utah State quarterbacks. We haven't talked Utah State for like 3 weeks in a row. But, man, we were just having at it for a while.
Other than the coaching
Other
situation.
than the coaching issue, yes, which is not a positive thing to be talking about, unfortunately. All right, what else we got? Okay, so JH says that Aiden didn't like the weather in Corvallis. He's from Cali. A little bit different there for sure.
Yeah.
He's gonna love the weather.
At least Lansing.
100%.
Oh,
you
God.
nailed that one.
I lived in Michigan for 3 years, and everyone said, "Oh, it'll be like Pennsylvania." No, it was terrible. It was terrible weather.
There we go. Steven, he's loving it. Curtis Rourke, legit QB. Indiana's gonna love the former Bobcat. Whoops. What am I doing? I'm going the wrong way, Steve.
I'm interested to see if Steven's still on. Let us know what you think. If Rourke would have went into the draft last year, if you think he would have gotten drafted, or if it was smart for him to come back, go to a Big Ten team and try and improve his draft stock.
Will Howard is a bulldozer.
Yeah.
Not as mobile as some quarterbacks, but knows how to shed blocks.
He's
a
that
big boy.
He's that dude that you want on the goal line, kind of like a Tim Tebow kind of guy. He's not the guy that you're going to spread the field, back at the 40-yard line and expect him to make guys miss in space. But I agree, bulldozer, use him at the goal line, short yardage situations.
So Tommy is giving me a perfect segue into the last item we want to talk about. I know Steven, I think, is still on. And he says, what about SU and UNLV to the ACC if they want more specific time zone? It's Vegas, baby. So one of the comments from our draft, our fun little draft that we did, our 64 team, 4-conference, whatever we called it. We called it Super League, whatever we called it, mock draft. Somebody laughed at my UNLV pick being my last pick, and that was exactly my response. Vegas, baby. You got to be in Vegas.
So if the ACC this seems to be kind of a thing that's popular on message boards of the ACC wanting to create that Western wing of the conference. If they did want to do that, I think Washington State, Oregon State, San Diego State, and UNLV, add those 4 to the 2 they have, and you got a 6-team Western thing would be fantastic. However, again, the decision makers have not shown any interest in that. And I think a big reason they added Cal and Stanford is the ACC kind of sees themselves like the Big Ten as very high, prestigious, academic elite schools. And I'm not sure if any of those 4 really fall into that category.
Yeah, I don't know. The whole thing just, I think, is the only reason it's being talked about is because of Cal and Stanford going to the ACC.
Yeah.
That's the only reason.
Right.
And it's not because the ACC actually went searching for them. It was
Right.
because the Pac was
By
blowing
default,
up, and it was by default. Now there's a lot of talk about this Western
Yes.
side, but that's not what the ACC was looking to do. They got these two schools because maybe they knew FSU and Clemson weren't going to be around much longer. So let's add whoever the hell we can.
It seems a lot more like kind of message board fantasy
It is.
football
I think it is.
than real, but we'll see.
Fun to talk about, fun to speculate. So 64 team draft. I know we have Steven on. I know our buddy Bill was picking up a load. I think he said in Florida, so he may be back on the road again. Did you have any thoughts? And we've done this now. It's been about a week and a half or 2 weeks. Have you thought back and went, I could have done that differently?
You know, first of all, the thing was a lot of fun.
It was.
It went a little differently than I planned. I really, really wanted to get down and get one of the top Florida teams, and Bill just totally shafted me on that.
Bill kicked butt, man.
Yeah. I think you know what my overall thought is, no matter how you do these. Oh yeah, he's here. Yeah, Bill, that college football guy, he stuck it to me. But my overall thought is, no matter how you do this, because we've talked about doing another one and trying to change things up.
Yeah.
I think whoever starts in that southeastern part of the country is just at an advantage. And that's just how it is, because there's just so much. That's where the talent is in the country. There's so many good football teams, so many historic rivalries. It just is what it is. And when we see that, I mean, I'm a Big Ten fan. I love the Big Ten. I love everything about the Big Ten. But we see it, and the SEC is known as the best football conference. Yeah. So I don't think. I still think I really believe you could still have regional conferences, but I don't know that you'll ever, if your criteria is you have to have 4 balanced conferences on the field, you're never going to have that. There's just too much talent in the southeastern part of the country.
Which is why I had to go to Texas.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, not a knock on the West, but if I'm trying to compete with the Southeast and what Bill built,
yes,
I have to have the Texas schools.
I thought you pulled off a total coup. Getting over to Texas, winning the race to Texas, and Bill had to choose. Was he going to block me in Florida, state of Florida, or beat you over to Texas? And he chose to block me in Florida. And I really thought that your conference was underrated. There is some East Coast bias, but when you add Texas. And you got Texas, Oklahoma, and Texas A&M, correct?
I had Texas, Texas A&M, and TCU.
And you had Oklahoma
Bill had
too?
Texas Tech, and I had Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Yes.
You add those teams to the pack, or two West Coast teams. Yeah. You add those, and it makes for a formidable conference. So it makes me wonder, years ago, what would have happened? Because that's what this was, a whole what if scenario for us. What would have happened if those 4 teams, Texas, Oklahoma, I think it was Oklahoma State and Texas A&M, where 4 of them were going to go to the Pac. I think the Pac would still be alive and kicking as one of the major conferences, and the Big 12 would have been the one that died.
Right, and Stephen makes a good point. We were, and we all could have weighted this differently.
Yes,
we all probably did. Well, I should say we all did weight it differently, but it was taking TV markets, geographic location, and brand power. It wasn't, if people would just looked at this and were like, what's going on with the brand power? I know that's not how I viewed it. Certainly geography, I had to get to the East as quick as I could.
Yes. And you got Nebraska, right?
I did get Nebraska. But he's right. It wasn't all of just brand power. It wasn't about just brand power. There was gamesmanship being played. There was, I loved the West Virginia pick that he did. Yes. I know there was a commenter that thought it was stupid. Yeah. I'm like, I thought it was freaking fantastic. But you could do this again 10 different times and it's completely different. I would just say the thing for me that was more difficult. And I saw some commenters say, "Oh, JY, you took Washington and Oregon way too early," and they're 100% right. I don't know who made that comment.
Right.
I should have saved them for my 5th.
Yeah,
I mean, and to be honest, was I being fair about it? I think I was, because I'm like, I can't pick them at 15 and 16. That's just stupid.
Well, also,
but I probably should have, because I was all about winning.
Yes, but also you were saying, because the whole point of this was to see, could you have 4 regional conferences? And you kind of stayed with the regionality, because if you would have, you considered going over to Arkansas, at a certain point it just gets a little bit ridiculous having you're no longer a regional conference if you have Washington and Arkansas in the same.
Well,
or
I
even over
wanted
to
them-
LSU. You could have been over to LSU. So
Well, I wasn't going to go LSU, but I will say to Bill, Arkansas and Missouri were two schools that I was very much interested in. But I'm like, no, I got to draw the line freaking somewhere, and I left some schools out of it. Like, I don't have Arizona,
Right.
I don't have the Beavs. There's plenty of schools. I know some people gave me some crap about Stanford. I don't know how you keep Stanford out of one of these. I mean, again, I'm not just talking football.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the whole university. I saw Josh was giving some love to UNLV here.
Yep.
I agree, and that's why I took them. There was a lot of, I can't believe he didn't pick Boise. Boise would have been the easy pick.
Yeah.
But I still think I took the right pick with UNLV. Now, the order, I get people's confusion with my order. And, fair enough. But whatever.
I still so we're discussing the possibility of doing another one of these. It's a G5 based, which I think will be really fun. This was a fun evolution. It's funny. Bill, that college football guy, said he had to defend because all three of us were picking on him. Boy, I just feel so sorry for him. He got the best conference all together, and he just had to. All three of us were picking on him.
But Steven is right. I mean, some people missed that it wasn't just about brand power, and that's accurate. I mean, Steven's conference, when you sit back and look at it, there's some really cool things happening there in that conference.
And that was one of the big points was regionality.
Absolutely.
And he created he went for more of the Appalachian region in conference, and he made a unique regional conference.
So I don't. Did you put the map up at all? So when you look at the map, I did. I was able to highlight our. I was able to highlight where we were. And Steve, yours is the weirdest shaped looking thing.
Yeah.
And I know why. I mean, it just led its way to where it went.
Yes.
Like, I don't think you were necessarily expecting to get to Iowa and Wisconsin. Maybe you certainly weren't expecting that. And then of course Bills in the Southeast. That makes sense, and mine kind of makes sense. The yellow is a little hard to see, so I apologize for that. But you have a very oddly shaped conference.
Yeah, I really expected to go mostly stay up and down the
coast.
East Coast.
Yeah.
I was hoping to go over and get Michigan State, and that would have been my farthest west. But with some of the moves that Steven made,
Right.
I basically ended up kind of like almost merged the old Big East with a lot of the classic. Big Ten teams minus Ohio State and Michigan. So it ended up interesting.
Very cool. Well, I will just say I appreciated Kevin coming on and doing his thing. He did what we asked him to do. I was a little surprised of the score that he gave me, but that's okay. Different strokes for different folks. And he doesn't like the West. That's what I learned from it. He's not a West guy.
And he said
He did.
East Coast bias.
He said it. Absolutely. So, hey, again, thank you to Bill and Steven for doing that with us. We may get around to doing another one. We will end this. Let's just check what our last couple commenters say here. Steve, UNLV is a sleeping giant. I think so, too. I think, $2 billion stadium, I think, and that, again, that's another reason. It wasn't just Vegas, baby. That's the easy thing to say, and it's fun to reply with that. I think the sky, or the trajectory of UNLV could be phenomenal here moving forward. So I picked them both for it's Vegas, baby, and for what I think the future could hold for them. So very good point, Tommy.
I agree with you. And if you kind of extrapolate what we did here and what we're seeing and talking about to the real world and real conferences, I think it's huge for the Mountain West. I think the Mountain West really needs to leverage Las Vegas. We've already seen them.
Yes.
The Mountain West basketball tournament, fantastic out there. They just did their media days there. We've suggested that they should do all Mountain West, have a pro day in Las Vegas, get all the scouts from across the country coming. I really think the sky's the limit for UNLV, and I think as long as they're in the Mountain West, I think that the Mountain West should continue to leverage Las Vegas, use it. Everybody wants to go there. Growing market, it's huge. They need to leverage it as much as possible for their branding.
Yeah, for sure. Bill says college football combat, and we said it was like a mixture between a mock draft and like Risk, the game of Risk. That's kind of what we were trying to build there. And then David says that depending on how things may have pushed towards the Midwest, it would have squeezed me more to be taking schools like maybe Oregon State, Washington State, Boise State. For sure. I mean, if I got squeezed out of maybe more of my Texas schools or Nebraska, Kansas State, absolutely that would have potentially given me the picks to pick. they were the kind of there. They were right on that fringe, and they could have possibly been picked. And then, go ahead.
Check It Out says stadiums don't make winners. It's the coach and players. Totally get that. However, the modern landscape of college football is all about revenue. You have to drive revenue. And the biggest item generally that college football teams have to leverage into revenue is their stadium. We've seen Penn State is spending $750 million to renovate their stadium. We saw San Diego State, renovated their stadium, and they didn't get the results on the field, so they made a change right away. And that's the thing. Moving forward, TV deals are so important, but we're getting to the point where there's only so much more value you can get out of a TV deal.
Sure.
And schools and programs are looking at how can we leverage our stadium, our real estate, to increase revenue. And I think it's an important thing.
Cool. Well, hey, that's it. We just nailed it again. I thought we'd only have about 4 items, and then things happen with Moody and with all kinds of stuff, the McMurphy article, and every time I think it's going to be a short, I just keep adding stuff to the topics because there's lots to talk about, and it's only going to get worse as we build up towards the beginning of, or the kickoff of college football. Things are just going to get hot and heavy. I am ready for it. As I said, the media days, I said to A.D. Dickey, the media days last week for the Mountain West have me ready for kickoff today. Like, let's do this sucker. I am jazzed. I'm ready to go. Got a couple more weeks. What did you say? You had the countdown to the Big Ten.
45 days.
45 days. I have to do the countdown to the Mountain West. It's probably about the same. Is that week 0?
Well,
do they do week
Penn
0?
State.
That's for Penn State. Okay.
Yeah, so week 1. Penn
Well,
State's
anyway,
game.
whatever it is, I'll tell you what, we're probably getting about 35 days then, 35-ish to the Mountain West, because there's a
38, week 0,
couple
yeah.
games in week 0. So, we're going to be starting doing some picks here real quick, Steve. We got to get our freaking previews out.
Can I say it?
I don't know. What are you saying?
College football is back.
We're ready for it. So, hey, with that, we thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like this. We never remember to say that. Thank you, JEH. Like.
Yeah.
We know you guys are probably already subscribed. We really do appreciate that. I saw that was at the top. We should have mentioned that. Thank you to our subscribers. 2,000, Steve. We hit the 2,000 mark.
And we're blowing past
Boom.
it.
Mind freaking blown.
We're blowing past it.
And we onward and upward, man. Onward and upward. We're having fun. As long as we're having fun, we're going to continue to do it. And we really appreciate our viewers.
Yep.
So, hey, with that, we thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time on the Big Mountain.